Costing $5 billion to construct, the nuclear cruiser, Admiral Nakhimov, is the pride of the Russian Navy, packing enough firepower to wipe out entire cities or eliminate any vessel standing in its way. It's supposed to be one of the most formidable military vessels the world has ever seen, the kind of mega-military innovation that Russia's President Vladimir Putin loves to boast about. But it's been rendered almost entirely worthless by Ukraine's armed forces, without them even needing to fire a single shot. So here's the full story of the life and effective death of the Admiral Nakhimov. The story of the Admiral Nakhimov began before modern-day Russia even existed. It was on May 17, 1983, during the days of the Soviet Union, that this ship was laid down, with construction officially commencing at the Baltic shipyard in St. Petersburg, then known as Leningrad. It launched a few years later, on April 25, 1986, and was commissioned on December 30, 1988. Back then, it was known as the Kalinin, and it officially entered service with the Northern Fleet on April 21, 1989. It was renamed a few years later, in 1992, in honor of renowned Navy Admiral Pavel Stepanovich Nakhimov, who led the Imperial Russian Navy to a historic victory in the Battle of Sinop during the Crimean War in 1853. Constructed during the Cold War, this Kirov-class battlecruiser boasted extensive offensive and defensive capacities, and is the largest surface warship to have been constructed since the Second World War, not including aircraft carriers. It measures up at over 823 feet, 251 meters, with a beam just over 93 feet or 28.5 meters, a draft over 33 feet or 10.3 meters, and a maximum displacement of 28,000 tons when fully loaded. It was equipped with an extensive arsenal, described by the US intelligence community of the 1980s as having an array of weapons that makes it one of the most powerfully armed surface warships in the world. Those weapons included 20 P-700 Granite anti-ship missiles and launchers, 12 S-300F surface-to-air launchers with 96 missiles in total, and a pair of 4K-33 OSA-M surface-to-air missile batteries, with a total of 40 individual SAMs on board at any given time. The Nakhimov also boasted a twin 130mm AK-130 dual-purpose gun, a set of RBU-6000 and RBU-1000 anti-submarine missile launchers, 10 533mm torpedo tubes, and 6 Cortic close-in weapon systems. This made it strong enough to fulfill its primary objective of countering NATO submarines and carrier strike groups. It was also constructed with a helicopter landing pad and enough underdeck storage space to house up to 3 Kamov Ka-27 helicopters. In addition, despite its enormous size, it was able to exceed speeds of 30 knots or 34.5 miles per hour, thanks to a special engine system that made use of both steam and nuclear power, together with a pair of steam turbines connected to a KN-3 nuclear reactor, with an oil-fired boiler to provide additional power as and when required. Thanks to this system, the Nakhimov enjoyed near limitless range when operating at lower speeds, and a peak speed of 25 knots or 29 miles per hour while operating on nuclear power alone, which can push past the 30-knot mark with the use of an oil boiler. On top of all this, the Nakhimov had sufficient space on board for a crew of over 700 people. In short, it was a formidable vessel and a frightening prospect for any NATO force to encounter in open water. But after the Cold War came to an end in 1991, the Admiral Nakhimov slowly started to lose relevance. The years passed, and there was less need for justification for Russia to continue operating such an enormous, expensive warship. As such, the Nakhimov made fewer and fewer journeys, culminating with its final 20th century voyage in July 1997. In 1999, it was towed to Severodvinsk, initially to undergo repairs, which later turned into an extensive and extremely expensive renovation project. Over the course of more than 2 decades, the Nakhimov remained in situ at the Sevmash shipyard. Bit by bit, the vessel was brought up to modern standards, but the project wasn't without its problems. It ran over budget and over schedule, Indeed, on numerous occasions, officials like Sevmash director Nikolai Kalistratov claimed that the project would soon be complete and that the ship would re-enter service, but the Nakhimov's renovation ended up taking almost a quarter of a century in total. It also cost a whopping 200 billion rubles, or around $5 billion, making it one of the most expensive military modernization programs of a single vessel ever recorded. Aimed at extending the service life of the vessel and making it more relevant and viable in modern combat conditions, the overhaul involved several major changes to the Nakhimov's offensive arsenal. The outdated P-700 Granite anti-ship missile launchers, for example, were removed and dismantled, according to Russian sources, before being replaced with 80 universal UKSK 3S-14 launchers, which are capable of firing some of Russia's most powerful modern-day missiles like Kalibrs, Onyx, and Zircons. The project also involved the addition of new radar systems, improving the vessel's situational awareness capabilities, and a 130mm AK-192M naval gun. Other close-in weapons, guns, and anti-submarine rockets and torpedoes have also received iterative upgrades, and the ship's air defense battery has been modernized, with the latest S-400 system replacing the Cold War-era S-300. These improvements helped to bring the Admiral Nakhimov into the 21st century, empowering it with long-range land attack capabilities. The Caliber cruise missiles, for example, which cost close to $1 billion each, can carry warheads weighing up to 1,100 pounds, 500 kilograms, and reach peak speeds of up to Mach 3, or 3 times the speed of sound, which is around 2,300 miles per hour. With multi-stage, solid-fuel designs and turbojet engines built in, some of these missiles had the power to strike targets around 1,550 miles or 2,500 kilometers away, and they've proven particularly effective during Russia's war with Ukraine. The Kremlin's forces have fired huge numbers of Caliber missiles at Ukrainian towns, cities, and military sites, leading to large numbers of deaths and injuries, along with extensive damage to buildings, ports, and valuable pieces of infrastructure. P-800 Onyx missiles, too, boast some impressive technical specifications, including an operational range of 370 miles or 600 kilometers, and maximum speeds of Mach 2.9 or 1,998 miles per hour. The Zircons, meanwhile, are the fastest of the three. Qualifying into the hypersonic category of missiles, they can reach top speeds of Mach 9 or almost 7,000 miles per hour, making them incredibly difficult to intercept and ensuring that any enemy force on the receiving end of a Zircon strike has barely any time at all to react and respond to it. With an effective operational range in excess of 620 miles or 1,000 kilometers, these missiles can deal devastating damage to targets near and far. With these additional armaments, the Nakhimov nuclear-powered missile cruiser is stronger than ever before, at least on paper. And in 2025, after more than 25 years in the dry dock, this colossal battlecruiser began sea trials, with plans to reintroduce it to military service the following year. That news should and could have sent ripples of concern throughout the Ukrainian ranks, as a cruiser of this size and strength could potentially allow Russia to assert dominance in bodies of water like the Black Sea, while also giving the Kremlin another launch platform for its deadly missile strikes on Ukraine's towns, cities, military bases, and civilian sites. Russia, meanwhile, should have been proudly boasting about its new superpowered vessel, ready to rain down fire and destruction on its enemy and lead the charge towards a crushing and comprehensive victory in a war that's raged on far longer than anyone, even Vladimir Putin, ever anticipated. But that's not what happened. Instead, behind closed doors, Russian officials are believed to be second-guessing the costly decision to renovate the Nakhimov in the first place, while Western analysts are labeling the entire project a massive waste of time and money. Ukraine, meanwhile, has managed to rewrite the rules of naval warfare so extensively that a big ship like this feels more like a costly, cumbersome burden than an invaluable piece of hardware. In other words, the new and improved Nakhimov is nowhere near as deadly or devastating as it first appears, but is instead another costly reminder of Russia's outdated doctrines and diminishing military strength. 28,000 tons of dead weight, with little to no chance of playing any sort of decisive or instrumental role in the remainder of the war with Ukraine. But before we get into that, if this is the kind of insight you want more of, make sure you're subscribed to the Military Show. We break it down like this every week. On paper, the Admiral Nakhimov should be one of the most valuable and vital pieces of hardware in Russia's entire arsenal. It should be out there right now, taking up strategic positions in the Black Sea, carrying out ground-shaking missile strikes on high-value targets dotted across the Ukrainian territory. It should strike fear into the Ukrainian armed forces, while serving as a constant, unshakable reminder of Russia's rich military history and unparalleled strength. But it's not doing any of that. Why? Because times have changed. There was once an era when a colossus of a cruiser like this would have been an extraordinary military advantage, the pride of almost any navy in the world. For years, Russia has been talking about bringing the Nakhimov up to date and reintroducing it to military service, and for years, that was a frightening prospect for the country's enemies around the world. But not anymore. A gigantic cruise with modernized vertical launch systems and dozens of onboard missiles is no longer the threat it once was. Because this is no longer the era of vast warships dominating the ocean waves. It's the era of drones. Cheap, simple, but remarkably effective when it comes to dealing damage and wiping targets off the map. Drones have come to dominate the war between Russia and Ukraine, with the latter proving particularly effective at developing innovative, game-changing models, capable of traveling both by air and sea to hunt down and eliminate any targets in their way. As naval expert and open-source intelligence analyst H.I. Sutton puts it in an article for Naval News, Ukrainian surface drones, USVs, present seemingly unwinnable defensive conundrums to the much larger Russian fleet in the Black Sea. So, as Ukrainian naval drones bottle up the Black Sea fleet in port, the Russian Navy has effectively saddled itself with a self-inflicted burden, desperately clinging to faded Cold War grandeur. Put another way, Russia still appears stuck in a bygone age, one in which record-breaking warships of staggering size and strength were the be-all and end-all of naval might. An age in which countries across the globe competed to build the biggest, fanciest ships with the latest and greatest missile launchers and air defense systems. But the truth of the matter is that age is over. Now, even the world's biggest and strongest military forces are moving away from constructing warships worth billions of dollars, instead putting more of their time and energy into drones and the platforms required to launch them. China, for example, has been working tirelessly to expand its array of uncrewed drone platforms in open water, and the US too is pouring a lot of money and manpower into constructing a naval drone fleet to keep up with its enemies in this increasingly important aspect of modern warfare. Russia, meanwhile, has thrown billions of dollars into modernizing a ship that no longer seems to have much of a place in the world today. As Sutton continues, the future of such large surface combatants in the age of uncrewed warfare seems increasingly questionable. Even before drones, concentrating so much money and firepower in a single hull was open to challenge, but now it's even more doubtful. While drones cannot currently perform all the roles of crewed vessels, the threat they create and the way that they're reshaping naval warfare is real. And Ukraine has led the way in that respect, consistently pushing and breaking the boundaries of drone warfare time and time again over the course of the conflict so far. There have been countless recorded instances of Ukrainian drone crews taking out high-value Russian naval assets. In late 2025, for example, the Ukrainian military made use of underwater drones to blow up a Russian Kilo-class submarine, which was docked in the Novorossiysk harbor at the time. The sub was estimated at around $400 million in value, while the kinds of drones used to destroy it are valued in the hundreds of thousands. This shows just how much more valuable it is, in this day and age, to have a strong selection of relatively low-cost drones to choose from, rather than a small array of enormously expensive warships. Often, all it takes is one or two well-placed drone hits for millions or even billions of dollars of military hardware to go up in smoke or sink to the bottom of the ocean depths. And there have been many other examples of this since 2022, with various Russian subs, landing craft, cruises, and other vessels struck, damaged, and even destroyed entirely by Ukrainian drones. It's even reached the point where Russia's commanders are scared to actually deploy their ships, including vessels like the Nakhimov, because they know that Ukrainian drone teams are scanning the seas and could easily launch precise, targeted attacks to take them out with ruthless precision and efficiency, all in the blink of an eye. In effect, Kyiv has sunk Russia's fleet without even needing to fire an actual shot. As Sutton notes, in the Black Sea, the Russian Navy is essentially confined to port due to the elusive yet persistent threat of Ukrainian surface drones. He goes on to note that even though these drones aren't actually as powerful as the likes of Onyx and Caliber missiles, they're still potent enough to deal game-changing damage, while also being small and agile enough to evade even the most sophisticated close-in defense systems used by Russia today. And perhaps the biggest advantage of all when it comes to naval drones over vast vessels is this: they're uncrewed. That in turn makes them expendable. Ukraine could send 100 drones at a Russian ship, and as long as a few of them hit the target and deal damage, it's a successful mission, without any Ukrainian lives lost or even put at risk in the process. On the Russian side, even the most hardened nationalist military bloggers aren't going to bother celebrating the destruction of a few dozen enemy drones. But if Ukraine can take out a Russian ship and its crew, which can sometimes consist of dozens or even hundreds of Russian soldiers, that's the kind of victory worth boasting about. The drastically cheaper prices of drones compared to warships, frigates, subs, and landing craft makes them even more dispensable. Warships, meanwhile, cost such a lot to make and maintain, they have to be treated with an exceptional amount of care. Operations must be planned out with expert precision, right down to the tiniest detail, and even the tiniest oversight or mistake can lead to catastrophic losses. And even though Russia's warships are vast and imposing, they're certainly not unsinkable. That was proven back in 2022, in the early stages of the war, when the famous missile cruiser, Moskva, the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, was sunk by Ukrainian Neptune missiles. This single instance highlighted the startling vulnerability of large warships without sufficient point defense and damage control capabilities. It's not difficult to imagine the Admiral Nakhimov suffering a similar fate if it were to find itself in hostile waters or on the receiving end of a well-orchestrated Ukrainian drone or missile strike. As Sutton writes, big ships like this may be particularly impressive in peacetime, but when it comes to real-world combat scenarios, they're actually not as invulnerable as they seem. Indeed, many aren't any better armored than the smaller ships hiding out in Russia's Black Sea ports. Thus, perhaps Russia may have been better learning the lessons of the Moskva and putting more money into fire suppression and damage control systems for its Nakhimov modernization project, rather than worrying so much about its offensive capacities and the number of missiles on board. Instead, as in so many other cases, when the country has wasted extortionate amounts of money on similar disasters, Russia continues to demonstrate astonishing levels of stubbornness and a remarkable resistance to move with the times. It continues to live in the past, playing by a rulebook the rest of the world has already abandoned. Ultimately, Sutton is one of many analysts to label the Nakhimov much more of a vanity project, focused more on the perception of might than genuinely practical military value. And the costs of this vanity project don't end with the modernization. A ship this size will come with a massive maintenance budget too. The more time goes by and the more Russia has to spend, the more likely it will become that the country's navy eventually decides to cut its losses and decommission the vessel. Meanwhile, Russia's number one enemy, the United States, was already fielding warships with Nakhimov-style land attack capabilities as far back as the 1980s. In fact, some of America's top cruisers, like the Ticonderoga-class vessels, which entered service in 1983, are arguably even more formidable than the Nakhimov today. They can be equipped with up to 122 vertical launch cells, for example, while displacing less than 10,000 tons. In comparison, despite being far larger, the Nakhimov only has around 80 cells. So, not only is the Nakhimov effectively worthless in the war with Ukraine, it's also decades out of date compared to world-leading US hardware. In the end, like Russia's T-14 Armata tank, which has also been hyped up by Putin and his Kremlin cronies, but labeled a pointless vanity project by detractors, the Nakhimov feels far more style than substance. Yet another visually impressive asset that Russia can enjoy showing off at naval parades, but one that fails to deliver any real military value to speak of. And it's not just at sea that Russia is fielding expensive, outdated assets. This video explores how the country's main battle tanks have proven utterly useless in direct combat with Ukrainian armed forces. Alternatively, check out this detailed breakdown of 5 of Russia's so-called superweapons that have utterly failed on all fronts. And finally, make sure to subscribe to our channel too, for more insightful analysis and breaking military news reports you won't want to miss.